Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you all for being here on this lovely gray Thursday evening. My name is Larissa Prairie. I am a board member at Latinas in Tech. I head the partnerships strategy for them, for us, I guess. But before we start, we usually have this little tradition of checking in with everyone to see who in the room is attending a Latinas in Tech event for the first time? If I could see. Yeah, wow, we have a lot of newcomers. That's excellent. Anyways, welcome to all the newcomers and welcome back to our existing members. One piece of reminder I wanted to share with you is that we would like all of you to register yourselves on our website. So when you get a chance, go to latinasintech.org and create your profile. That will help us create a database of our community and eventually share with recruiters, share with each other, and help each other in our career prospecting. Without further ado, would like to cover with you our mission statement. So basically, we're here to connect Latinas, connect each other in the professional realm of technology. We're here to support each other as well. So if we hear success cases, we're always sharing those stories. And also that event that consequently empowers our community in the tech industry. So Latinas in Tech Week, we're comprised of 8 chapters today. It started here in the Bay Area with the Silicon Valley chapter. We have Sacramento, we have LA, Austin, Chicago, Miami, New York, Mexico City, and there are rumors of new chapters opening up in Washington, D.C., Boston, Brazil as well, maybe. Madrid. Did I hear Madrid? We're working on it. We're conquering the world, and that's what matters. We represent over 23 nationalities in Latin America, and that's pretty much all the countries in Latin America. And we represent over 100 companies in tech industry. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to one of our founders, Rocio, and she's going to give a couple of remarks and start with that.
Don't worry, no remarks. So that was our introduction from Latinas in Tech. I'm super excited to moderate this fireside chat with Victoria Espinel. We welcome you. Thank you so much for coming all the way from Washington. So big round of applause. President and CEO of BSA, which is a group that advocates for tech companies in Washington. Making sure that technology, cybersecurity, intellectual property have enough policies in the right place. She's advised several administrations, so thank you so much, Victoria, for coming in today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
The way we're gonna do this, for about 25 minutes, I'm gonna ask her a few questions. And feel free to take notes and ask questions. We have a Slido where you can add questions in the meeting so that you don't forget. Or at the end, we will schedule 20 minutes for live questions. We're trying to web stream online, so it's our first time streaming. I hope that it's working. And people might be.
We have people online right now.
Yes.
So free.
Yeah, they might be from the board. But then people can actually ask questions online, so feel free to go to slido.com/LIT of Latinas in Tech. So anytime you can do that, you can upload other questions, and you are super welcome to ask your own questions here live. So Victoria, thank you so much again. Let's start. I know you have an amazing, amazing career in Washington. You really work hand in hand with the largest tech corporations. But I'd like to just go back to when you were a little girl. Tell me, what were your dreams when you were little? What inspired you to go into this career path?
Well, when I was very little, when I was 4 or 5 years old, actually, I found this piece of paper years later, and apparently I'd written a letter to my mother saying, when I grow up, I want to be an opera singer, and I want to have 100 children. And I have two lovely boys. I cannot sing at all. So my career path kind of evolved from my vision when I was 5 years old. Although, many of the things were true when I was little. I really liked to read and learn things when I was little. I really liked to travel and see new places, and I really liked to eat. And all of those things that were true when I was little are still true today. But how I got into tech is actually something that came much later than when I was little. Something that sort of evolved during my journey through law school.
Got it. So you studied law.
So I started law. So my father immigrated to the United States from Colombia. He came here with $20 in his pocket and 5 words of English to study to become a doctor. He bought a dictionary and taught himself 100 words every night. When I went to law school, I went to law school with the intention of becoming an immigration lawyer, because I thought then and believe now that our immigration system desperately needs reform. When I was the first year in law school, I got a job at an immigration law firm. And I will tell you that a few weeks into that job, while I still thought the issue was really important, I didn't agree with the way the law firm was conducting its work. And so I was very unhappy and wanted to get out. And so I have this very vivid memory of sitting in the food court and thinking, I'm probably 20 years old at this point, thinking like, I've made a terrible mistake. Like the entire rest of my life is on a bad track. And I found a found a phone directory. These cards don't even exist anymore. It was a phone directory of all the different agencies. And I just started cold calling with no plan, like down this list of government agencies. And on what was probably the 100th call, I got super lucky. The assistant was away from the desk. An attorney in the office with a sense of humor picked up the phone, and when you heard this person on the other side of it saying, I'm a first year's law student, I'll work for free, he decided, again, as I found out later on, completely against the rules that the Department of Commerce has, to invite me to come in to do an unpaid internship in the part of the Department of Commerce that ended up being the part that's in charge of the internet. But I didn't know anything about that when I went. When I got there were all these interesting conversations happening about the fact that someday it might be possible to send words, or like maybe even a photo, over telephone lines. And like, how amazing was that going to be? It was called convergence at the time. And the commercial internet wasn't really in existence. And I thought this sounds really fascinating. And so that, and I will say, I had an amazing female boss in that job. Super demanding, super smart, let me do amazing things as a first-year law student. And so there's two things: it's the excitement of this idea of the internet, essentially, and then this amazing woman boss that I had came together, and that summer internship led, in some ways directly, in some ways indirectly, to the rest of the career that I have.
Great. And how did all this technology law side of your work interact with the fact that you were a Latina? There's not that many Latinas, and also not back then, like just 10 years ago. It's not easy to find. How did that play a role in the way you even decide on yourself as something your next project?
So, it's true there aren't a lot of women in tech, and even in other parts of my career that were there were more innovation focused generally as opposed to tech specifically, and I've often been the only woman in the room. So there are not a lot of women, there's certainly not a lot of Latinas. Although, interestingly, at this amazing summer internship that I was talking to you about, the other summer intern in the office is a woman named Janet Hernandez, who has been, like, we're still super close friends. I mean, we were texting earlier today. So there was at least one other Latino with me right from the beginning. But it is true that there are very few, and that is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. And I think it's great for Latinas and tech taking this on and trying to fight that battle.
That is very true. In fact, that leads me to my next question. What do you think of the situation of Latina in tech in the United States? Not just in your personal career, but how do you see our situation? Do we have where is our opportunity laid?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's great about tech and tech jobs, I mean, you guys, you're here at Splunk, you're in the middle of San Francisco, you're like in the heart of the biggest tech hub in the world. But one of the things that is really interesting, I think is going to change how people work in the future, is the fact that tech jobs and software jobs, or jobs that need tech skills, can be done anywhere in the United States, it can be done anywhere in the world. And you know, one of the things that we spend time thinking about is this whole idea of tech hubs going to be imploding? In 20 years, the whole idea of a tech hub can be turned on its head because software actually lets people work from wherever they want. And when that happens, and I think that is going to happen, it's going to significantly expand the opportunities for people, whatever part of the country they live in, whether they're in an urban area or a rural area, whether they're in a state that has traditionally had a lot of tech investment like California, or they're in one of the many other states. We did a study a couple of years ago, and one of the things that we found is that there is growth in software jobs in every one of the 50 states, but where we're seeing double-digit growth are in states like Indiana and Nebraska and North Carolina and Louisiana, which is a personal favorite of mine for personal reasons. But we're just seeing this tremendous growth around the country, and that means for all underrepresented communities, there's going to be many more opportunities in the future.
Nice, thank you. What do you think are the most important challenges that you think Silicon Valley is facing in Washington?
Well, raise your hand if you have heard the term techlash before. Okay, all right, this is great. This is not a Washington, D.C. heavy crowd. That's wonderful. But one of the challenges that we're facing in Washington, and frankly we're facing around the world, I mean, so like Latinas in Tech, my organization, BSA, the Software Alliance, we work around the world. We have offices in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, and we work on tech policy in many, many countries around the world. But one of the challenges that we're facing in a number of countries, and including in Washington, is this growing skepticism about the tech industry and about the impact of the tech industry. And a lot of those questions are really legitimate questions. A lot of the concerns are legitimate concerns that need to be addressed. One of the things that I really love about the job that I have and the companies that I work with is I think in the software industry, I think my board members, and that includes people like Lenny Stein of Splunk, are saying, there are challenges there. We shouldn't hide from those challenges. We should admit they're there, and we should figure out how we can address them in a way that maximizes the benefit for everyone, instead of saying that they're not there and not trying to address them. But there is this growing skepticism about tech. It comes from things like growing concerns about cyber attack and cyber breaches, from concerns about election interference, concerns about income inequality, concerns about privacy and the impact on that. And again, those are real concerns, and they need to be addressed in a serious way. But I think that growing distrust of tech, and I think a lot of it comes down to people and policymakers feeling like they've lost control. And so I think fundamentally, whether it's cybersecurity or privacy or election interference or income inequality or all the various sort of specific issues, I think a lot of it comes down to people feeling like they've lost control. And I think until the tech industry helps people understand and makes it a reality that the control is in people's hands, not in the technology's hands, I think that fear is going to be there. So I think that's the issue I think the biggest issue that we face is that lack of trust and making sure that power is in the hands of the people, that the tech is there to help them and not the other way around.
Thank you. Now you work with a lot of very, very large tech companies up in Washington, and I was wondering, when you interact with their executives and with their board members, do you feel, the representation of females in leadership positions is growing. It's not where we want it to be, but it's growing. I'd like to focus on boards. How important do you think it is to have female members of the board, and more so having a Latina in the board? That doesn't really happen now, but what is your take?
It doesn't happen that often, that is for sure. So, look, if you look at boards, I think in the United States, the stat at the moment is 11% of board seats are held by women. I don't know what the statistic is for Latina women. But but I can guarantee you it's some small subset of that 11%.
Just imagine if 1% of the employees of tech companies is women of color.
Right. So, it's an enormous problem, and boards have a big issue with underrepresentation in a number of ways. But clearly getting more women on board and getting more Latinas specifically on boards, I think is a critical issue, and I think it's really important for the companies that want to be as well governed and to get to get advice from their boards that's as good as it possibly can be to bring that perspective in.
What do you think our government could do in the future to help us build the STEM pipeline and help us take this type of problem but from the very ground? And I'm splitting this question into two, so this is my first part. How do we fix the bottom with the pipeline of STEM students and people knocking on the doors of corporate or tech companies? And then the second is for the Latinas that are already here, like the Latinas that is right in front of you. What can the government do and we do to help this whole situation? It's a big question.
So, I think in terms of the government, I think funding, is the number one thing. We at BSA have been pushing to get $100 million in funding for computer science education. Frankly, it's not a lot. And we've not yet been successful. So, it's hard to get things done in Congress, as everyone knows. I think continuing to push for more funding for computer science education is important. But in terms of what we can all do collectively, I am a big believer in role models, and I feel like that word gets thrown around a lot. But what I think is really true is that when you see someone that you can relate with, and whether that's because they sound like you, or they look like you, or you just feel like you have an affinity with them, I think that's really, really powerful. And so I think having more Latinas in positions, one, to do active mentoring, I think is important, but also just to be in those positions so that other women see that they're there and feel like that is a viable opportunity for them. I think that's really important. And I think groups like this can really help us with that.
Thank you. So, I believe you were one of the first, or the first, advisors to a president under President Obama and advising him on technology. Am I correct?
I was his advisor on intellectual property.
Intellectual property. Is it intellectual property in technology or just in general?
Any kind of intellectual property, but obviously patents and trademarks and copyright, they show up a lot in innovation. So whether it's software tech, biotech, that was a big part of what I did.
So now, when you were working in the White House, you put together a very strong team, and you had to convince teams, offices, and groups on the mission that you were fighting for. So how was that fight? How did your personality help? Did your Latina background, you believe that it played a role? Did it play a role? Can we use our background as an advantage or a tool? Is this an opportunity we can use?
So I basically, just to explain that a little bit, I started this brand new office inside the White House. It's a very unusual thing to do, to start a new office in the White House. And we were, like many startups, we were very understaffed, and we had no budget at all. And part of the other consequence of starting a new office in the White House is that everyone else in the federal government feels like you are stepping on their toes. So for 6 months, 90% of my day were turf battles. Turf battles with my colleagues in the White House and turf battles with the other federal agencies. And I remember one of my colleagues in the White House, actually a Latino man, saying, you work at the White House, you just need to tell the agencies, like, this is the way it is, this is what's going to happen, you need to lay down the law. And I said, I could do that, but I think if I give it 2 more months of talking to agencies, I understand why the White House coming to tell them to do something is unnerving. I had been a career before that previously, so I kind of knew where the agencies were coming from. I knew what they were worried about. So I think I could spend a couple more months, convince them of the mission, convince them that this is going to help them, not hurt them, that my whole reason to exist is to try to make the government work better, to try to accomplish the president's priorities in a way that is good for everyone. I think that's the way to go. He was skeptical. I I did what I wanted to do anyway, and it worked. And it took a little bit longer than if I had been more didactic about it. But after 6 months of, fighting, cajoling, persuading, using spheres of influence when I needed to, at the end of that, everyone got on board. And for the next 4 years, it was this amazing experience because my colleagues in the White House and my colleagues at the Department of Justice and Homeland Security and USTR and Commerce and State and HHS and all the various agencies that I've worked with, those are the parts of the government that negotiate trade agreements, Health and Human Services, the Department of Justice is law enforcement. They all came together and it worked amazingly well. And I think part of that was because I had been a career, that means not a political person, in an earlier administration, so I kind of knew where they were coming from. But I also think it helps to have a perspective where you are coming from a place that's underrepresented, where you maybe understand why having someone dictate terms to you is not going to be the most convincing strategy long term. And so, maybe in part that's from being female, maybe in part it's from being Latina. I will also say though, something that I got from my family, from my own personal experience, was a real belief that if you try hard enough and you believe in something, that you can make it happen. Maybe not the first time, the second time, or the 10th time, but like you really want to make something happen and you really keep at it, that you are eventually going to make that happen. And I think a lot of that does come from my father's experience and from my family's experience.
Nice. We're fighters.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you're a very confident woman, very successful woman. One thing that oftentimes we discuss here in Silicon Valley in our group is that many of us suffer from the imposter syndrome. Have you ever suffered from that? And if you did or did not, how did you battle?
So, all the time. All the time, in so many different jobs. And so I think of it as a lack of confidence, but actually that's a really good phrase for it, because it's feeling like you don't belong there, you're not prepared, you don't have the right experience, for a variety of reasons that you don't belong to be in that room, you don't belong to be in that conversation. So I'm extremely familiar with that feeling. And I would say that I dealt with it in a few ways. One is just try to put it out of your mind. So like you're in the room that you're in, like don't get too caught up in your own thoughts. Realize that probably what you're thinking about yourself may not, or may not be what other people are thinking, but whatever it is, like that's not, you can't affect that. And so if you just push it out of your mind, at least for that moment, and when you're out of the room, then you can like go and think about it and worry about it and stress about it. But like in that moment, to push it out of your mind, I think is extremely important. A second thing that I would say is, and I think women, just to generalize, have a tendency towards efficiency. And so one of the things that I would tell young women that I would see, because I would see it in myself as well, if you're in a meeting and things are going basically the way that you think that they should, I think often women will have an opportunity be like, well, I'm not going to speak up. I don't need to speak up. Like this is the right thing that's happening. I'm not going to add 4 more minutes to this meeting by adding my voice to it. And I think that's a mistake. Unless you are already in a position where you have a lot of known power or known expertise, I think you do have to speak up. I think it's best to try to find something to say that's not wholly redundant to something that's been said. But I do think making a point of speaking up and speaking in a, I think it can be really scary. I think it's really important to do. And the third thing that I would say, and at one point I actually had like a quota, like a metric for myself. I think it's really important to do things that scare you, because I think the only way you stop being scared is if you do them so much that eventually they are not scary to you. So you can start off being terrified, you will move to being lightly scared, you will move to being nervous, you will then move to being neutral, and eventually you might move to liking it. But you don't really even need to get to liking it. You can definitely move from scared to neutral just by the power of doing something over and over again. And so I remember at a certain point in my career, I was like, if I'm not doing 2 things a week that are really scary to me, then I need to change that. Like I need to kind of stretch beyond. Now, I don't think you want to exaggerate that. I think if you are terrified all the time, you probably got yourself a little bit over your head and you need to pull back. But But I think being really intentional about doing the things that are scary and believing that if you do them over and over again, they won't be scary anymore, because that is 100% true. I think that's really important. And then you won't feel like an imposter anymore.
Thank you. That's very important. So you see this room of women in tech. What piece of advice, what would be the most important piece of advice that you could give us so that we can take leadership positions in tech, grow in our own careers, get promoted, and get our voices heard?
So I think one thing, this is going to sound a little strange, but I think it's true. I think it's really important to actually like tech. I do think sometimes people get into it because it's, you know, it's a well-paying job, it's kind of where the future is. But I think if you don't actually like it, you don't actually find it interesting, it's going to be hard to be as successful as you would be otherwise. So I think that's important. Second, as I said before, I think speaking up and making your presence known is really important. And I think being open to doing things that are interesting, even if they seem like they may be a little bit off the career path. So my career path is very much one of twists and turns. And I took a number of jobs that I know people thought were a really bad idea at the time, but they were interesting to me. And I think that is something to stay very open to find things that are interesting and not worry that much, or at least not make all of your decisions based on kind of title or having what seems like a very linear, straightforward career path.
Thank you very much. So enough of my questions. I do have more, but I'm gonna sorry, let our audience ask questions. So because we are Latinas in tech, we made a QR code with our logo. You can just take a picture of it and go straight into our Slido page. So if anybody has a question right now, we can pass along the microphone. We're gonna share it.
I had a question. So for every leadership capacity they provide, they asked me if my race is Hispanic or Latino. I was wondering, is it better to put diversity like to be true, or do you reduce the chances of getting hired if like even I'm black?
You mean by identifying yourself as Hispanic or Latina?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is, I don't know, because I'm not, you know, I'm not inside the HR department, but I'm going to tell you my guess is that I don't think it's going to hurt your chances. I think it will be neutral to helpful, and I would be shocked if it hurt your chances.
Another question from the room? If not, I'm gonna read one of the questions on slide. Great question. What are one to two things allies can do? And by allies, at Latinas in Tech, we mean our partners, our friends, can you hear me? I'm going to repeat it all. What are one or two things that our allies can do to help, to support, and amplify Latinx that are aiming to get into tech? And the definition of allies to us is any person that is not the definition of Latinx. And it's the definition.
So I think one thing that people should do is be really open and accessible about job opportunities that are out there. So we actually put together sort of email list coming out of the Obama White House of Latinos that had been in the White House. And so whenever there are jobs that come up, and then we actually on Friday have a special section for tech jobs in tech. It goes out to this entire listserv of emails so that people can kind of make sure that those jobs get out, at least to the community that's part of that email chain, which at this point is a pretty broad community. And I think that's kind of an informal thing that we set up, but I think groups like that try to get the word out about jobs as broadly as possible, I think are really helpful. And I assume that is some part of what Latinas in Tech does, trying to get the word out about job opportunities that are there.
Definitely. Yeah, check it out. We have a job board in latinas.org.
Okay, that's great.
On the allies question, Victoria, what group would you consider like, or have you had experience forming like good allyship with? Like, I feel like the Black community has really kind of banded together and made strides. I feel like the Latinx community as well, but there's still a lot of kind of diaspora, like lot of differentiation of like, oh, well, I'm not from Mexico, I'm from Colombia, and so that like kind of separates us a little bit. So what have you seen like allyship within the Latinx community, or what groups have you truly like seen come together and work with?
I mean, I think in Washington, I think there's some groups doing great advocacy. So like La Raza does a lot of really great work. There's a group called Naleo that does a lot of great work and for the Latino community as a whole. So I've, in terms of sort of broader networking groups, I have less examples that come to mind. But in terms of advocacy in Washington, I think those are two great groups that are doing a great job. And I would encourage people to reach out and support them.
Can you repeat the name?
Yeah, one is La Raza, and one is Naleo.
Taking note. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. So being on the Hill, you feel a lot of bureaucracy. So what hardships have you faced, and how have you overcome them?
I don't actually spend that much time on the Hill myself. I've got a team of lobbyists that work on the Hill. You know, we do a range of things, including advocacy. But to ask the more general question in terms of bureaucracy, because I've worked in two administrations. I was in the Bush administration as a career, as a trade negotiator, but I ended up in a very senior position, and then I was in the White House with President Obama. And so I'm familiar with the concept of bureaucracy and administration through them. Although I will say, in both of those organizations, they're both very lean. And so in my own personal experience, there actually wasn't that much bureaucracy to deal with. Certainly in the White House, I found if you had an idea and you could talk to your colleagues, it's a pretty warm environment in the White House. People told me before I went into the White House, like it's a snake pit, all White Houses are snake pits. That wasn't my experience, and I actually found it was pretty easy to reach out to people, talk about your ideas. And when I was at USTR is the part of the President's office that negotiates trade agreements with other countries. I also found that to be a very flat place without a lot of hierarchy. So there is certainly bureaucracy among the government agencies, but in my own personal experience, there wasn't that much of it. One of the things that I loved about both of my government experiences is that I felt like it was really possible with work, right? That it was possible to get things done. I mean, the federal government, it's a large ship. It can be hard to turn it. But in both of my public service experiences, it felt like it was actually possible to get things done if you were willing to work out hard at it.
I'd like to take one from our slide. Thank you. We only have two microphones, so we need to share. Okay, so the upvoted one says, how would you recommend to make changes in your professional career? Not the lineal or the one that would make sense.
So maybe it'd help if I told a little bit about my career and what I mean when I say that I took twists and turns. So I've told you all about this internship that I kind of lucked into. Lucked into there because I made 100 cold calls saying I was willing to work for free. And then that kind of led to other things. So I graduated from law school, and I've grown up in Washington my whole life. And I wanted to be an internet telecoms lawyer, but what I really wanted to do more than anything was move to New York. And you really couldn't get the kind of job I was looking for in New York. So I went to New York to be a securities lawyer, to do something that's called securitization, asset-backed securitization. I'm not going to get into describing what it is, but it was really fun to live in New York for 4 years. And I knew it wasn't the kind of thing that I was going to do forever. So I decided to quit my job at this big law firm in New York and take all the money I'd saved and move to London to go to the London School of Economics. And at the time, a lot of people told me that was a really bad idea. I was up, I was on the partnership track, I was doing well, and it was a really hot area in the legal team. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I quit that job, I moved to London, I went to the London School of Economics to study internet and copyright law. And when I got out of the London School of Economics, I tried to get a job. And I tried for 9 months, and nobody wanted to hire me to be a copyright lawyer or an internet lawyer. So I completely ran out of money. I was sleeping on, my door probably kicked me out because they're like, you graduated months ago, like you can't stay here anymore, you have to leave. So I was like sleeping on, friends' floors, and eventually, again, due kind of a lucky circumstance, I written the paper, I sent the paper to my old professor at Georgetown. It turns out they were a partner at a VC law firm that had a London office. They said, why don't you go and have lunch? I went and had lunch. It was very pleasant. At the end, they were like, I was like, at the end, they decided to hire me, which is great. And then I got this really fabulous job working to set up kind of internet and intellectual property programs across Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Western Europe. And at the time, again, a lot of people thought that's a bad move because in order to convince Covington and Burling to take me, I had to give up a few years of seniority. So at this point, I've now been out of law school for, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years, and I'm a third-year associate at a law firm. And people said that is not a good career move. But I thought it was going to be really interesting, and it turned out to be fascinating. It was at a time when the Eastern Europe was coming out of communism. They were putting their legal system back together. Part of what I was doing is trying to help build that legal system back up. And so among the many, many stories I could tell from that time, this one was, I was actually 1 week on the job at Covington, and my client said, I think we need to go to the Czech Republic. I think our local council is stealing money from us. I need to fire him. Will you come with me? I was like, sure, that sounds great. I've been here a week. I'm going to go to Prague. Like, this is amazing. So we get on the plane and we go to Prague, and we sit down in front of the local council, who is, I've been told, ex-KGB. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was told. And I'm sitting there taking it in, and my client turns and she goes, I think Victoria has something to say to you. And I had not prepared for this at all. And so I was like, well, I think it's time that our relationship should come to an end. It just stares at me, and he starts screaming at me and chatting. He's a very large man. And then he rises up from the table, and then he sinks back in the chair and he just starts sobbing and beating on the table. Then he starts kind of working himself up into a rage again. So my client turns to me and she goes, the files are on his desk. Grab the files and run. So I scoop up all these files on the desk. I go running down the streets of Prague. He is running after us, screaming. She's like, I think there's a metro down there. I've been on the job for a week. I'm like, what in the world? This was a bad career move. What the hell? But it turned out to be an amazing job. It's a little bit of a bumpy start, but truly amazing stories, and a lot of it was because we were kind of helping these countries that were just sort of putting the rule of law back together, teaching them in a way how to be lawyers. From that job, I got an offer to come to USTR to be a trade negotiator, and I almost turned it down. I remember I actually picked up the phone and hung it up 5 times before accepting, because I was so hesitant. I loved living in London. My career aspiration at the time was to move to Hong Kong. But I went to USTR, and I told myself I'm only going to do it for 2 years. That, by the way, has been a defining thing. Every job I've taken, I'm like, I'm only going to do it for 2 years. I'm definitely going to move on. And then I got to USTR, and I loved it. I loved representing the U.S. government. I loved working with governments around the world. There aren't always a lot of women negotiating these trade agreements, so it was really fun to be kind of a senior woman in these negotiations, and just the responsibility and kind of realizing how the rest of the world looks to the United States as an example, and being that example for the United States was an amazing experience. And then I left. I did a brief stint as a professor, and then was so fortunate and honored to have the president ask me to come into the White House to start this little startup office that I told you about, and be his advisor on intellectual property. And then I left the White House to do this job, which is also amazing and is similar in some ways to being in the White House, in the sense that I work on issues around the world, and I work on issues that are changing really, really quickly, like artificial artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, privacy, this kind of cutting edge of how, not just how technology works, but how we live our lives and the impact that it has on us.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was kind of a long answer.
No. So that leads me to a very good question by Melissa. How do you think we can change the general public's bad perception that tech is making our lives worse?
Well, I mean, I think one of the ways we need to do that is we need to make sure tech isn't actually making our lives worse, right? I mean, I think some of the concerns that are being raised are real concerns, but I think, you know, technology and innovation are not going to stop, right? They're going to continue to move forward, and that's a good thing. And so we also don't want people to become so frozen by fear that they're not taking advantage of the amazing things that technology can do. So I guess I would say two things. One is, I think we need to address the concerns that are there, and, you know, part of my job now is thinking about what are the right rules for when government can get access to information that people have. How do we tell people, you know, what those rules are so they understand what is happening, you know, when law enforcement is going to have access to their information. They understand how that changes depending upon what country they live in. They understand what the privacy rules are. I mean, I think that is a big part of what we do as an organization. And so having people understand that and making sure it actually works in the right way is really important. And then second is making sure that the amazing technology that's being developed here is used in a way that is as beneficial as possible. So to give a concrete example of that, there's a lot of conversation right now about how to build, and it's happening at Splunk actually as well, how to build AI in a way that tries to avoid implicit bias. And those are really important conversations, and BSA as an organization has put out recommendations for how you can try to create and train AI in a way that doesn't have bias. But another really important part of that conversation that isn't happening as much is how do you then use AI? What has been built? How do you use it in a way that broadens inclusion as much as possible? How do you use it in a way to tackle problems like visually impaired or people with autism, and use the AI to help make our society and make our workplace more inclusive? And there needs to be a lot more conversation about that as well.
I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in. I have a question from Gabriel. What advice would you give to the 700 plus thousands of DACA recipients who are starting their careers but might no longer be able to work in the U.S. in a few years?
Well, I think and this is hard, but I mean, for an individual, they need to not be frozen by fear and continue to move forward. But this isn't on them to solve, right? It's really on the rest of us to solve. So the big answer to that question is to continue to put pressure on Washington, pressure on the companies. I know the companies that I represent and work with have all been very active in trying to push for reform, and just continuing to collectively push for that reform, including, you know, making it very clear that this is an issue that industry cares about deeply and continues to bring those concerns to the administration and the Congress to fix.
Before I go to other questions on Slido, is there any question in the room? Nada.
Amazing parkour on your career. And by hearing you, I feel like being a Latina was never an issue. And I don't know how true that is. But that's the message that I get from what you're saying. My question is, how do you make the equilibrium between moving forward as if this is not, I mean, being a Latina is nothing else than being somebody and moving forward in your career, with the fact that we need to make a face in this battle, and like, how come, like, listening to your career, it sounds like it was never something that, which I don't know that it's true, but, you know, like it sounds like, well, yeah, of course you could make, like, move forward and advance so much, and how come we still have today to make groups and organize and fight for it, and like, how do you explain that equilibrium of the two situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I didn't mean to imply, and it's not the case, that it was easy, right? I mean,
Which is not, sorry, I didn't mean
yeah,
that's not what I meant. It's just like,
but but I will also say, and I will confess, I'm not sure this is actually great advice. I mean, the way that I dealt with it was what I said before, I was putting it out of my mind. And I questioned whether or not that was actually the right approach. It's what I came up with, it's what I did. But I think, probably if everyone did that, it's probably not great, actually, right? Because then it's just kind of putting the issue underneath. So I was just being honest about what I did and what worked for me. But I think it's, to your point about the equilibrium, I think it's much better, actually, if there are candid conversations and if there are support groups like this and people looking out for each other. I think on that specific issue, I mean, everyone, regardless of who you are, has confidence issues, or very, very, almost everyone in the world has confidence issues. So I do think as a general matter, wherever your sort of insecurities come from, it is best, if you can, in the moment to try to put them out just so you don't get too wrapped up in them. But I don't think it's, and I wasn't meaning to imply that the right thing is just not to think about them or not to ever address them. So, and I think having groups like this one that are really kind of explicit and overt and have an opportunity and kind of a safe space to talk about those challenges, but then also support each other, because that's really the important thing, right? Like, everyone knows the challenges are there, so it's good to talk about them, and then the important thing is to try to address them together, and supporting each other, I think, is one of the main ways that we can do that.
So just, how many more questions do we have in the room? Two, and then we will close after this two.
Hi, thank you for sharing your story. I wanted to learn a little bit more about how you have tech companies understand government and policy work specifically, because I come from the government world and I don't work in tech. I went into consulting after that when I came to San Francisco from New York. So for me, it's really hard because the policy world in tech is really small and seems sometimes very senior, rather than like having a team who like works and delivers. So just wanted to hear your opinion on that.
So what part of government were you in?
I was working for the mayor's office on economic development in New York City.
Oh, that's great. So you work for mayors. You work for like part of government like actually getting things done, like real things people actually care about. That must be really refreshing. So yes, I mean, I think it's tech companies, like all companies, but probably tech companies even a little bit more, I think are really focused on what they're doing. And I think there's this view that government is either, neutral or actually harmful. In fact, I guess this is being extremely recorded, so but I'll go ahead and say it anyway. When I was I will never forget the first meeting that I had in Silicon Valley when I was in the White House. I came out here, and there are a number of GCs and CEOs from various companies in the room. And one of the people in the room turned to me and said, you come from Washington, like you're just here to urinate on the beautiful flowers of Silicon Valley. I was like, it's such an odd analogy. But it was frankly, it was kind of ridiculous. It was like, we're changing the world, government is ridiculous. He then stormed out. I was like, as a trade negotiator, you're in a lot of rooms that are hostile. I'm like, you clearly just did this so you could storm out. And like once he left, I was like, he's gone. Now let's all have a conversation that it makes sense to have. But there can be a real antagonistic feeling. The truth is, I believe in public service. I believe in governments when they are doing what they're supposed to do, and I think they can have a real impact, and they should have a real impact as long as they're acting for good. I think it is a challenge to try to explain to people here kind of what that is. Like, it's fascinating to me that I asked this room if you've heard of Techlash, and a few people raised their hands. I mean, if you were in Washington, in my world, you hear that term maybe 20 times a day. And so that was fascinating and refreshing, but it also, to your point, like there is a real divide. And so, when we work with companies here, we try to explain to them kind of the challenges that we're facing in Washington, but then they also try to explain to Washington and to Brussels and to the Japanese government and the Indian government that this is what's happening in the tech world. These are the challenges we're facing. This is why it's important to have good rules on privacy or trade or cybersecurity if we want innovation to keep happening in a way that's responsible. But there is a real, that sort of education or translation, that is a real challenge, and it's, you know, part of what we do every day.
Thank you.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Linda, you had a question?
Yeah. My question is regarding, you kind of mentioned divide, which I think the country is very much so at this moment. What the, like, I guess what the vibe was in Washington, D.C. It's obviously different from the West Coast and like this bubble, honestly, that we live in. You know, we're trying to fight the good fight, and we're trying to like oppose social injustice and you know, make this a more inclusive like space for everyone. But having worked in a very like progressive administration where we are thinking about like frameworks to align artificial intelligence and you know, policy to one that doesn't seem to care. And I know these like opinions might not be appropriate to share like in the setting, but I was just curious to like know what the vibe in DC is as well, because we're obviously not there.
So, you know, I think one thing that's true in DC is that the divide between Republicans and Democrats, the kind of the partisan rancor, seems like it's just increasing. And that is really unfortunate because, you know, I'm a Democrat, but there are Republican policies, true Republican policies that I think also make sense. And frankly, whether they're my beliefs or not, or they're policies that I agree with or not, you know, the ability for people of different political beliefs and people who believe in different types of policies to be able to get along and have a rational conversation about them is really important, right? I think it's actually really important to have a conversation with people that you don't agree with. And you know, when I was in public service, I did a lot of reaching out to people that I knew would disagree with what I wanted to do because I felt like I learned so much from having conversations with people who don't agree with me. But you can only learn from those conversations if you're actually listening to what the other side is saying, and if you're somewhat open to the fact that they might have something to contribute that you don't. And I think where Washington is right now is that listening is just broken down, and the kind of this partisan rancor and kind of party above everything else, and winning your next election or keeping your party in power is the overarching goal, as opposed to serving the citizens of the United States, which is that is the role of government. No one should be there unless serving the citizens of the United States as a whole is the reason why they are there. But it seems like we're losing that, and it seems like people are being politicians and people in Washington. Some of them are more motivated by trying to win an election or trying to keep a party in place. That is not true across the board. And one of the things that's also unfortunate is there are also still to this day a lot of people in government, in the executive branch, in Congress that are there because they want to make a difference. But it's getting harder and harder, I think, to make that difference just because there is so much infighting and so much fighting between the two parties. It's an unfortunate dynamic.
Thank you so much. And just to close, one last question, and I picked it from the online questions. What is the most positive that highlights your your proudest moment of your career?
That's a great question. My personality is one that I tend to look for things that need to be improved more than things to be proud of. So I don't know if I'm proud of this, but here's an amazing moment from my career. Amazing from my family is, so I was in the White House, and it turned out coincidentally that my sister also ended up in the White House. So by completely different path, totally unrelated to what I did. She worked for Senator Leahy, who was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is a very powerful committee, and she was his senior national security advisor. And then she came to White House counsel's office to be senior counsel on national security, and then ended up working on a number of things, including criminal justice oversight and immigration reform. But there was, a couple of years where we overlapped in the White House, and we were both working like crazy hours because we do in the White House. But we would run into each other every so often in the hallway, and seeing my sister, and occasionally I would sneak down to her office when I was having a bad day and just be like, Could I take 5 minutes to talk to you, and vice versa. But running into her in the hallway and seeing my amazing rock star sister there with me in the White House, that was a pretty great moment.
Interview your mom and dad too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming here today and giving us your time. Awesome.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of new people here, you might not know that every time we finish with a selfie, a group selfie, and then that goes into our Facebook group. If you're not yet part, it's Latinas in Tech, have a group in Facebook and join the movement. So we'll do a picture. There's still, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. And now we're gonna give a couple minutes, actually 5 minutes, for Splunk to give us a few words first, and then after that there will be more refreshments for us. So, Suzanne. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for coming. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Victoria. I'm truly inspired by your story, your authenticity, your career, your humility, your humor. What an inspiration, right? I'm just once again, please, round of applause. And a huge shout out to our Somos employee resource group, led by absolute powerhouse and runs our Hispanic and Latin employee resource group. So thank you all so much for coming. My name is Suzanne Montgomery, and I look after diversity and inclusion at Splunk. Thrilled to have you here. I understand that I am between you, the bar, and networking, so I will be very I just wanted to tell you a bit about manual and data points, and this is something we do as a kind of cultural habit at Splunk. So I am not a native Californian, as you might be able to tell. I'm actually Scottish originally. My husband's from West Africa, Nigerian. My 3 children are Californian. Claire is from Colombia. My sister is gay. I just was at her wedding in London. She just married her long-term partner. And that's the way we roll. That's our norm, right? And I do absolutely wholeheartedly believe the kind of emergence of global citizens like ourselves who care deeply and are committed to this space. So I love get-togethers like this, and I love the power of community and the power of inclusion. And I would encourage you all to just kind of share on that different level, as I think it's very important to us. It underscores our commitment to things like our employee resource groups. This wonderful lady here is organising our Hispanic Heritage Month in September, so we'll have lots of things on the agenda there. We do partner with organisations like Meetup, so we try and recruit from as many diverse groups as we can. Also, groups like partner with Latinas in Tech. We're looking forward to Korea in Tech as well. So lots of good energy in this space, not to say that it is not a challenge. And it does take all of us, it does take the broader ecosystem. And Splunk is here, right? We're committed to helping in any way we can. As well as the broader ecosystem, if any of you are looking to join a company, we are growing and we are hiring. And you do not have to be a computer science major, right? You do not have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a UI or UX developer. You could be all of those things, which is awesome too. But there's many, many, many jobs we have in finance, in HR, in marketing, and if you're interested, there's a wonderful member of our talent acquisition team, Will Wesson, at the back. If you can raise your hand, Will. Feel free to have a chat to Will. I mean, literally, beginning of last year, we were 2,500 people. We ended the year at 4,000. A few months later, we're now at 5,000. And by the end of next year, we plan to be at 10,000. So just to give you an idea of the kind of scale of growth, there is room for everyone here. And we welcome you all, whatever capacity. If you want to join, if you want to connect, if you just want to have fun with us. So I just wanted to say thank you so much again. I'm absolutely humbled and amazed by this lady. Thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us. And have fun. Enjoy.